The objectives of the webinar today are for me to explain the benefits of having a career plan and to demonstrate what a good career plan looks like. I'm often asked, how do I go about this process? What should it look like? And then also to help you look at and identify your core skills, any gaps that might exist, and how you go about dealing with those. And I'd also like to introduce you to our career pathway framework as well, which will help you to manage your career and to look at how you can do that, and the skills and experience, etc., that you need at the different stages of your career. I'll also take you through other activities that will help in terms of managing your career, as well as just outlining the supports that we have here within Chartered Accountants Ireland. So what I'd first ask you is, like, how many of you have a career plan? And it's actually interesting when I speak with members, the number of them that don't actually have a career plan. So you might like, I suppose, send a message to me there in terms of any comments you have around that, and how many of you actually have a career plan currently. So the other question I'd ask you then is whether you spend more time planning your annual holiday or more time spent on actually developing your career plan. And I often find, again, from speaking with members, that many would spend a lot more time planning their annual holiday than they do their career. So it is interesting that that's where the focus is. But obviously, a career plan is an important part of any career success. So if we look at why have a career plan, so it's really about if you don't know where you're going, it's a lot more difficult to get there. So I'd liken that to getting into a car and not knowing where you're going. There's very rarely a time that we would actually step into a car and not know exactly where we're going. Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I think the webcam wasn't working there, so we've just hit that now. So you'd very rarely step into a car and not know where you're going. So it's really important to switch on that internal GPS so that you have a good sense of where it is that you're going. So if we look at what the importance of having a career plan is really it allows you to set out and chart your goals. It provides you with a clear sense of direction, so you know exactly where it is you want to go. You're much more likely to actually achieve those goals if you have them set out clearly in front of you. You're much more focused, and especially in a very busy world that is really changing around us all of the time, it's much easier to stay focused on your career if you have a specific direction or a specific set of goals that you're working towards, and it keeps you on track. And where I've seen members where things haven't worked out according to plan, it often is because of a lack of clear direction and no plan. And then if things don't go according to plan, you're better able to deal with any setbacks that might occur. Similarly, then, there's increased job satisfaction because you're on track, you know where you're going, and you're much more focused and motivated. So that in turn does lead to greater career success as well. So how do we go about developing a career plan? So I'm going to take you through 4 easy steps in terms of how to do that. The first step being spending time on reflection and getting to know yourself and what's important to you. The second step then is exploring your options. So looking at that and taking you through the steps that you need to take to look at all of the options that are open to you, making sure that you're not leaving anything out. Then how do you go about making those essential career decisions? So we talk through that, and then essentially then moving on. So how do you then take the next steps then after that? So the first part, knowing yourself, and like as Aristotle put it, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, because it's really important that you spend that time reflecting on who you are, what it is that's important to you. So I'm going to take you through a few steps around how you do this. And the first step I always recommend for members to undertake is to start with a career audit. And we actually have a full career audit questionnaire that we make available through the Institute Career Services here. So if you're interested in getting a copy of that, just let me know. But essentially what you want to do is to kind of look and see, where are you at now? Look at what's working for you, what hasn't, like what are you enjoying about your role, what maybe isn't quite so enjoyable, and you're looking at it and saying, well, look, where am I now relative to where I might have hoped to have been? And then if you look back and say over the last 12 months and ask yourself, well, look, what skills and experience have I added to my skill set that I didn't previously have? Or you could also look at it and say, well, look, if I'm staying in the role that I'm in currently, how likely am I to add additional skills to my skill set, or will I be doing more or less the same role? So it's all about checking out where you stand at the moment, and just getting a better sense of that, and using that then as a starting point from which to move forward. So it's all about building awareness. Similarly, then, I'd always recommend for you to look at your values. And your values are those beliefs and ideas that are important to you. I suppose it's our moral compass to some extent, but it's also about what we hold as important. So for example, I've given some examples there around what typically values are, but teamwork, if we look at that, so if one of your values is teamwork, you're not going to enjoy working in a role that is in a standalone capacity. So it's really important that you get a sense of what that is for you. Another example might be around growth, like if growth, personal development and growth is important for you. Being in a role where you don't have those opportunities, again, won't be something that is going to be enjoyable or motivational for you. So it's really important that you get a good sense of what your own values are. And there's some really good tests online that you can do free of charge. I've mentioned one there, so I certainly recommend taking the time to go through those. And similarly, we do have some values questionnaires that we can share with you as well if you want to spend some time around that. Very closely linked then to your values are like your motivators. So it's really what gets you out of bed in the morning, what makes you feel good about your role. And again, these will be things that are very individual to you. And I've given some examples there of what those motivators might be, and they're different for different people. So they could be anything from financial reward. So for some people, financial reward is really important. For others, it's not as important. I met a member last week who really was more interested in the sector that she was working in rather than the financial reward. She was working in the charity and not-for-profit sector. So for her, the nature of what the organization was about and what it stood for was more important than financial reward. So you need to really understand that, what's important to you in terms of what it is that makes you feel good about your role, what it is that I suppose gives you that sense of satisfaction, and ultimately makes going to work an enjoyable experience for you and gives you that sense of job satisfaction. And again, looking at what success looks like for you, and I'm a firm believer in that looks different for everybody. Not everybody wants to scale the dizzy heights of the C-suite. Other people prefer, a role, yes, that is interesting and is challenging and they're making a difference, but it isn't necessarily all about seniority and job titles. So you need to decide what success looks like for you. And the Wheel of Life model that I've put on the slide there is actually a good way to kind of map that out, and to decide what are the key things that are important to you in terms of your success, and then plot out on that circle then where you're at the moment in relative to where you need to be, and looking at that to get a better sense of what success might look like for you. So for example, if you were looking at the salary side of things, you might say, right, well, I'm on 70 at the moment, but for me, career success would be edging more towards the 80 or 90, for example. Similarly, then, if you were looking at kind of work-life balance and flexibility, where you're working at the moment, it might only score a kind of a 5 out of 10, so it might be kind of halfway along the continuum of the lines there within the circle. And your main objective when looking for a new role will be to find a role where there might be greater work-life balance. So it's really all about tapping into yourself, a little bit of navel gazing, as the expression would be, to really tap into, what does success look like for me? And it's really trying to visualize that, really think it through, and to get a good sense of what's important to you in terms of career success. So I like this diagram because it's a good depiction of I suppose that ultimate thing that we all work towards, which is your dream job. And as the expression goes, if you find your dream job, you'll never actually work a day in your life. And it is very, very true. And I suppose if we could all find that role where we were doing something that we loved and that we were genuinely passionate about, something that that we're good at, and that utilizes the skills and the experience that we have and our natural skills and attributes, combined then with being paid for it, that really is the ideal scenario. So you can use this diagram to actually plot that out. And I've an example now that I'll talk you through. So if you look at it and say, right, well, what's my passion? And this is an example of I suppose a member that I met with recently. Their passion was charity work, working within a sector that helped others. So that was, I suppose, their passion, and what they I suppose were motivated by. Their talent was within the organizational analysis and financial planning area. And if you were to kind of look at those and then look at areas where they could actually get paid for, I suppose, using those talents, and in an area that they were passionate about, then the options were a financial accountant or a controller role. So the good way of showing you where you can actually achieve that the ultimate of a dream job and dream career. So moving on now to knowing your skills, and this can be a challenge for many to actually just, I suppose, sit down and actually work out what your specific skills are, or what are the skills and experience that you need to move on to the next stage of our career. And with that challenge in mind, we have actually developed a career pathway toolkit or framework specifically for members, where you can look at and the skills that you require at different stages of your career. So if you look at the diagram there, you can look at it from the perspective of being a young professional, or from somebody who is developing, and so that would be the kind of the 3 to 5 year time frame post qualification, whether you're in that expert, which we broadly speaking refer to as FCA, and then finally you have that kind of leadership I suppose phase of your career. And then we broke it down into the different skills areas. So you've got the technical skills, you've also got the leadership skills, which you'll need more and more as you develop your career, and also then the professional and commercial skills. So you can go in, and depending on the stage of your career you're at, you can look at the framework to see what skills you should have and possess already, or what skills you need to be working on. But as well as that, there are suggestions there in relation to how you might develop those skills. So it's certainly a very, very useful tool in terms of helping you with this getting to know yourself and your skills. As I said, it's specifically designed for chartered accountants. It's relevant whether you're in practice, industry, or any particular sector. It's relevant. We've looked at technical skills and soft skills, and again, as I said, we've looked at all the various different career stages. So it's a really easy tool. You can follow it step by step, and it's a good opportunity for you to look at the core strengths that you have, but also to look at the gaps that might exist, because we all have gaps along the way that we need to bridge, and there are specific suggestions in there in relation to how you develop those skills. And it's not all about classroom training. There are some very practical activities that we suggest you can undertake, even things like TED Talks, mentoring, coaching, etc., that can help you in terms of your career. And it then will allow you to map out the career journey that you want and the skills that you need for that journey along the way. So it's a really very useful tool. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Similarly then, another way of identifying those skills, and members actually really like this tool when I share it with them, and I tend to call it your success bank. So if you look and say, you can just take out a blank sheet of paper and say to yourself, so what are the skills and the accomplishments and I suppose, key achievements that I have had throughout my career. So that could be anything from the time that you qualified right through, any projects that you've successfully delivered, any big initiatives, systems implementations, etc., that you've been involved in, any secondments that you have. So essentially, you take each of those accomplishments or achievements, and then you look at them and you say, so to have achieved what I did, what skills did I need to demonstrate to get to where I got to in terms of those achievements. So it's really looking at it. So for example, if we took the project completing a project, you might say to deliver the project on time, it showed that I was able to work to tight deadlines, I was able to multitask, I was able to collaborate cross-functionally, I was able to communicate with other non-finance people. So hopefully that'll give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So look at your core achievements and then explore and ask yourself, like, what core skills does that show that I had? And that, in conjunction with the career pathway, will give you a really good sense of the core skills and competencies that you have to offer. So the next step then, as we mentioned of the four, is exploring your options. So like I always ask members or suggest to members here to look strategically, because you need to really take this as an opportunity to look as broadly as you can and explore all of the options, both internally within your own organization, but externally. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actively looking for a job. But even if you're happy in your current role, you should also be looking externally just to see what's going on in the market, because things change so quickly that you need to know what's going on. And you need to be thinking about that next step in your career at all stages. So in terms of looking at those long-term options, and like, meet people for coffee, have regular conversations, hear what other people have to say in terms of the market, so that you know what's going on there. Looking at a SWOT analysis, I'm sure many of you've heard of that, but even doing that in terms of your own skill set in the marketplace, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and exploring those options and seeing what's out there for you. And then having a think about what, like your skills, as we spoke about earlier, but what's unique about your skill set? What is the unique combination of skills that you have? Because sometimes it can be challenging to differentiate yourself, that you might have, very similar skills to other people, but maybe when you combine it with something else. So for example, if it is analytical skills combined with project management, for example, could give you the edge over somebody else. So, what is the unique combination of skills that you have? Similarly, then you need to look and say, right, well, where do the skills and the experience I have fit? So it's going out, looking at the various different job websites, seeing what roles are coming up, mapping then your skills against what the requirements are of other of recruiters and organizations, and seeing where they might fit in and how your skill set fits in. And it's always a good idea to have a look. Use LinkedIn as a great tool for looking to see what others are up to, what career paths they have followed. Look at others that you might have qualified with, for example, to see, where are they at now, what are they doing, and it's a good way of connecting in with them as well. And I'd also always ask you to kind of think as well in terms of a solutions focus, because we're very much working in a world where employers are looking for solutions, to challenges, and people who think innovatively and creatively. So it's thinking about what solution you hold that you can bring to an organization, and how might you add value, because that's what employers and organizations are looking for, is in terms of how you specifically add value. So I think it's really thinking about those areas, but most importantly of all, it's thinking about what unleashes your passion and allows your creativities and skills to be utilized, because ultimately, you're going to do better from a career perspective and a performance perspective if you're in something that, or doing something that you're passionate about, that you really enjoy, that allows you to be creative and allows you to use the skills that you have. So it's kind of playing to your strengths. So it's looking to see where the options are internally within your own organization or externally that allows you to use those particular skills. Now, sometimes those scenarios are right under your nose in your current organization, and you may not need to go anywhere, but it's just a case of sticking your head above the parapet or putting your hand up and asking for those opportunities. So it's really important that the decision makers know that you're looking for other opportunities, that you're having those conversations, that you're looking at ways of getting involved in projects or systems implementations, or taking on new responsibilities. So have those conversations. And now at this time of year, a lot of you will be doing performance appraisals, etc. So it's a good time to be having those conversations, and also as well to take on those additional responsibilities and to try new things in a relatively safe environment, because you're already established in the organization, can actually be a good way of doing that. So I would encourage you to look at new opportunities, or where there are synergies between your experience and other areas of the organization, to look at that. And some of the new areas, or areas where we're seeing particular opportunities coming up, will be in the likes of cybersecurity, anything to do with data, risk, compliance, big kind of hot areas at the moment, anything to do with analytics, business partnering, and project management. So keep an ear to the ground in terms of any opportunities to get involved in those areas. And sometimes I find if people are a little bit disillusioned, they let kind of things slip a little bit in their own organization. But this could be an opportunity for you now to reclaim your power, put your hand up, for new opportunities, and use that as your chance now to get more experience. So if you have any questions as we go along, or any comments, just let me know. I'm happy to answer those as we go along. So please do type in the chat there if any of you have any questions or observations. So when it comes to exploring your options, mind mapping can be a really good tool. And this is a tool that's used across a number of areas and disciplines. And it's a case of taking out a blank sheet of paper and then, dropping something in the middle, like for example, on the example here we have in front of us in terms of my career, then looking at, your next role, what do you want to get from that, and plotting that out from there, thinking about all the considerations, all the things that are important to you in terms of your next career move. So it could be, you want to get people management experience, you want to get commercial exposure, and it's good just to explore options, explore concepts, see them down on the page, consider the consequences and the different aspects that you need to bear in mind. So it's a really good way of seeing it in black and white in terms of the options, how you might plan that out. Unintended consequences can often come out of this as well. So you might look and say, right, well, my next job, I would like to get some exposure to traveling abroad, but you might be thinking, well, look, in 10 years time, the kids might be, at school going age. I don't really want to be traveling at that stage. So it gets you into that frame of mind where you can think of all of the different options and implications and considerations in terms of your career, and it's there in black and white, and you can kind of, I suppose, explore option A, option B, and look at the different career paths open to you and see it there in black and white. And it really is quite effective. It's a good, I suppose, brainstorming kind of exercise or tool that can be used, and it's used successfully in business and project management and lots of other formats as well, and has a good success record. So the other thing I would urge you to think about when you're exploring your options is the benefits of strategic moves. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. If you look here, there's the lady here on the right hand side climbing the ladder, and very often we think that the career path is naturally an upward trajectory, but that's not always the case. It's not always a kind of a straight path straight to the top, and sometimes your career does need a strategic sideways move, which you can use to build on your experience, build on the skills that you have, and use that then to make your next move. So I would often compare this to the climbing wall, which you'll see in the picture down the bottom in the middle there, where again, to get to the top, you often need to kind of take those sideways moves. So you may not necessarily be moving up the ladder, but you're moving across to build on or solidify and I suppose kind of further develop a particular skill set with the view to moving forward. Now, often those strategic moves can be shorter jolt moves, as they're often referred to, that where you might strategically take that decision to take a sideways move for 1 to 2 years with the aim of then moving upwards. So it's that strategic sideways move that then facilitates that move forward at the next stage. So I would seriously urge you to consider that, because I've seen it work very effectively for members at various stages of their careers. And there is a phenomenon around that, and it's called jolt move. So that it's that sideways move that builds on your experience, maybe brings you into a new sector, a new industry, exposure to new systems, and like build your network, etc. So it's definitely worth considering. So structuring your career plan. This is a question that I'm often asked, is like, how do I put together or draft a career plan? So I'm going to take you through this step by step. The first thing is that you need to look at it in different time segments. So you've got short term, medium term, and long term goals. You're breaking it down, and any good career plan should be structured in this way in terms of short, medium, and long term. I suppose previously short term would have been 0 to 3 years, medium term then 3 to 5, and then long term kind of I suppose maybe 5 to 10 years. But because the workplace is changing so quickly, and I suppose roles and skill set requirements, etc., are changing, I feel that time frame should be changed. So I would be talking about short term being the next 12 months, medium term then being 3 to 5 years, 1 to 3 years, and then long term being 3 to 5 years, because of the nature of the world in which we're working has changed so much. So short being up to 1 year, medium then, just to recap, 1 to 3, my apologies, 1 to 3, and then long term then 3 years plus. So it's breaking it down into kind of smaller chunks. So the first thing you do then is look at that goal, look at your goals. What are the goals that you want to achieve? Where do you want to be at the end of that 12-month period, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years? So breaking that down, and really give that very serious thought in terms of what it will actually look like. So the more detail and the more thought you put into that in terms of what the goal will look like, the better you are able to work towards that. So it could be, looking at the role, the organization, the salary, what you're looking to get from it, so really a good like detail. So really live those goals, like visualize the goals, visualize what you want that to look like. The next step then is to actually clearly break it down to say, what do I need to do to achieve my goals? So it could be looking at, what experience do you need to get, and what other qualifications or courses do I need to do to help position me for the next move? What do I need to do in terms of positioning myself internally? So it's really just looking at that, the action orientated elements of it in terms of what you need to do, because there's no point in having a goal without actually taking action towards moving towards that. Thirdly, then you need to look at the tools. And what I mean by that is, like, what help and support do you need along the way? So do you need the support of one of your colleagues or your manager in work? Do you need a sponsor or a mentor? Who is there to support you along the way? Because this doesn't have to be a journey that you undertake on your own. There are tools there and supports that you can avail of, like our career mentor program, like our coaching service here within the institute as well. So don't feel you have to go it alone. Do look to see what help and support you need along the way, and see where you can tap into that. Finally, then you need to look at the results. So what, how are you going to measure your success? And like there's that famous expression of what gets measured gets done. So it's about, setting yourself an actual measure of success. What is it that you're actually working towards? And try and put metrics around that and say, well, in 12 months time, I want to be, or in 12 months time, I'd like my salary to be, or in 3 years time, I would like to be in a head of finance position. So it's really to be very specific around that in terms of what the measure of success will be and what you're expecting that outcome to be. And the more visual and more real you can make that, the easier it is for you to work towards that. So just as a recap then, a robust career plan has to be time bound. So as I said, it needs to have those time bound or time specific goals. It needs to be action orientated. You need to build in activities there that will help you to achieve your goals. You have to have a results focus, so you need to be working towards something. And importantly then, you need to be adaptable and flexible in relation to your career plan, because it may not all go according to plan and you may need to come back and revisit it. So you need to be ready to deal with the change, and you need to revisit that plan if things don't go according to plan, and be flexible, be adaptable, be ready for those changes, and be ready to adjust it where you might need to. And do, as I said, revisit it, update it then on a regular basis, and even check in every couple of months to see how are things progressing, what has gone well, what hasn't, what do I need to tweak, what do I need to change along the way to make sure that you're staying on the path to your ultimate goals. And critically, it has to motivate you. There's no point in having a fancy career plan if you're not working towards what you ultimately want. So it has to give you that fire in your belly. It has to give you that sense that you want to achieve it and really make you want to work towards it, because otherwise it can be the most elaborate and most detailed plan ever, but if it's not something that motivates you, it's just not going to happen. So you really need to look at that and see, is this something I really want to achieve? Is it going the right direction? And that's why I dwelled on the motivators and values at the very outset, because they're critical to your career plan being motivating for you. So making decisions then, how do we go about that? And your career plan has a critical role to play in this, because if you're faced with decisions that you have to make, whether it's an opportunity has come up within your own work environment, or a job opportunity has come up externally, or you need to make a decision around a course, etc., that you might be looking to undertake. It's really it can be really helpful if you go back to your career plan and I suppose look at the opportunity and look at the decision and see how it fits in with or maps into your career plan. So it gives you a good basis and a referral point to check and see if this particular decision, what impact it will have in terms of your career, and what guidance and steer your career plan will give you in terms of helping you to make a decision that is in line with the career direction that you're going. And does the opportunity really stack up? Will it help you in terms of your career? Another good question always to ask yourself is, where will it leave you in 2 to 3 years' time? So that you're always thinking that step ahead. The other thing is always as well to bounce ideas of other people, get other people's input, their feedback, their thoughts, whether that's, friends, family, other work colleagues, peers, managers, etc., your mentors. Always just kind of sense check it and get another opinion. Really, really important. And I'm a big believer in gut instinct. So if something feels right for you, then the chances are it will be right for you. But if not, then you need to look at that in more detail and try and understand what it is about the particular decisions that doesn't sit right with you. So it's, I suppose, the overall point here I'm trying to make is that your career plan can be a good basis from which to kind of sense check opportunities and decisions that you're making, and check in with it to say, right, if I say yes, is this in line with my career plan, or no, how will that impact in terms of my overall career progression? So it's a good I suppose way of keeping you on track and checking to make sure that you stay on track and you're heading down the right direction. So moving on then, I suppose I really like this phrase, which is life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and often we are making decisions that push us outside of our comfort zone. That can be a little bit scary, but it's a question of I suppose feeling that fear and doing it anyway, and bringing yourself to take on those opportunities. And I think I also like this in terms of faking it until you make it. And very often we do have to kind of step step into that unknown. You're not always going to have all the skills and all the experience to be able to take on new challenges, and you're often kind of learning along the way. So it is really important that you have that positive mental attitude, that you can take on new challenges, that you can display the confidence to be able to embrace those new opportunities. It's a bit like the swan, I suppose, that analogy of the swan on the water, where they look calm, everything on the top, but they're underneath, they're paddling away frantically. And that often can be the experience of people when you're moving into a new role or taking on a new opportunity. But the important thing is to kind of hold your nerve, act and look the part, and focus on your energy, your drive. Consider how others might interpret your body language as well, because it's really important that they get a sense of confidence, that you're prepared to take this on, you're doing so with confidence, but also as well that you are, if there are any setbacks, that you're prepared to take those on. And that's where I suppose the career plan can often help you to do that, to kind of reassess things and get things back on track. The other important element here is to kind of assess your own appetite for risk, because we all have different appetites for risk, and your risk appetite can vary, I suppose, too, depending on what stage of your career you're at. You might have more of a risk appetite earlier on in your career, whereas later on, when we settle down and with kids and mortgage, etc., you mightn't have that same level of risk appetite. So it's important that you have that sense of what works for you or not, as the case might be. So it's all about staying focused and knowing where you want to be. So I thought it'd be useful to add in a couple of other kind of tips here, as well as giving you what I've just done there, which is the structure around your career path and the career plan, and how to map that out. So hopefully you have a better understanding as to, I suppose, the benefits of it, how you go about it, and I suppose the important elements of it. But two other aspects that are always important in terms of career planning and building a career are personal branding and networking. And there are two areas that come up consistently when I'm speaking with members. So it's really important that you look and see, well, look, what is my brand? What do I want my brand to be? And I did a webinar on that particular topic towards the end of last year. So that is available online. If you've more interest in this particular area, I would suggest having a look at that to give you a sense of how you go about building a personal brand. But essentially, you need to know what others are saying about you and what message you want to get out there into the market. So it's being mindful of that. It's managing that message yourself so others aren't doing it for you. So it's about having that 20-second introduction ready. So if you meet the CFO in the lift, what are you going to talk to him about? It shouldn't be the weather. It should be around the projects that you're working on, the value add that you're bringing to the organization. Or if you're out at a networking event, it's that 20-second introduction in relation to who you are, what you do, the value that you add within the organization. So it's that, I suppose, that sticky message, I often call it. It's that message that will help people remember who you are. And it's all about being prepared for these situations, and being ready to get that message across. So personal branding, obviously very closely linked then with the whole area of networking. Actually, just seeing here, I've put together a couple of, just like a slide here with a couple of different elements of your brand that you can take a closer look at later, as well, because you'll have access to the slides just in terms of the different elements to it. But they're covered in more detail, as I said, in the previous webinar that I did. So if we look at networking now, it really is very, very important in terms of your career. And essentially, as you move to more senior roles, it'll become even more important, because what we tend to find is that the roles at the more senior end of the market are often filled through word of mouth. And it's about getting that tap on the shoulder, because somebody knows you, they know what you do, they know what you're capable of, and you are the one that hears about the role before other people do. So it's really important that you build that network as your career evolves, and that I suppose you're natural about it, that your personal brand that you use when you're networking is natural. It is your authentic you. That's I suppose a kind of a phrase that's used out there quite a bit. And you're going to be more comfortable networking if you're being authentic about who you are. A lot of people don't like networking, but I think if you're being authentic and showing your true self in these scenarios, you will actually enjoy it more. And it is about listening as much as it is talking. That I suppose kind of familiar phrase of having two ears and one mouth, and using them in that proportion. You'll have more success in networking if you listen to people, show an interest in them, get to know them, and I suppose generate conversations around topics that are equally of interest to you and to them, and you build that connection, and those connections will be a lot more meaningful. So it's really kind of focusing on the other person. It's focusing on what I would often say, giving rather than getting. So going into this with a kind of a genuine I suppose aim of getting to know the person and genuinely building connections, rather than thinking about what it is that you can get from the process. So it really, for me, I think if I could give you a kind of standout piece of advice around this, it's around the quality of your network rather than the quantity. And it's looking at this as a long-term process, and investing time in it that will, as time goes on and as your career evolves, become much more important. You should also look at your own network and do an analysis of it, and look and see who is in your personal boardroom. And it's a good way of analysing your network, because you don't want your network to be made up of just, say, chartered accountants or just finance people. You want to try and I suppose kind of build as broad a network as possible. So not just, say, if you're working in financial services, for that not to be just in financial services. You want to try and have that as broad as you possibly can. And then I'm sure you're all familiar with LinkedIn, that LinkedIn can be a really, really good and useful tool for networking. So just before we conclude, just as a quick overview, in terms of what we've spoken about today, which was how to develop a career plan, and I genuinely feel that it's a worthwhile exercise, worth putting the time into. Certainly need to revisit it on a regular basis to make sure that you're keeping in line with the original plan, or checking to see, is the plan that you made still relevant, because things do change. So you might need to revisit that and see if it is still relevant and it's still motivating you to achieve what you want to do. You need to know what makes you happy and what you want to achieve for that career plan to suit and for it to work for you. You need to be flexible and adaptable, as I said, like in a fast changing market and environment that we all work in. You need to be flexible. You need to stay in touch with that market, and make sure that the skills and the experience that you're gaining are relevant. So it's exploring those options, knowing what's going on around you. We touched then on building your network and your exposure, really very important. And then seeking support and help. Don't feel you have to do this on your own. There are supports out there. For I suppose, and I'm going to talk you through those here in terms of our supports. And then finally, it's about believing in yourself and your qualification, and believing that you can be and will be successful once you're following the path that you yourself want to follow, and that it is motivational for you. So, as I mentioned, there are a number of, I suppose, supports that we offer as part of the career development service. One being impartial careers advice, so we're at the end of the phone, or we're more than happy to meet with you on a face-to-face basis and provide coaching. Our coaching service actually was shortlisted for the IITD Awards in 2016. So, we have a first-class career service here. Similarly, career mentor program, we can actually put you in touch with a career mentor, that somebody who can give you that independent advice and act as a sounding board. So if you're interested in that, do please contact me. Similarly, then we do have the career pathway tool that I mentioned. So do check that out. And every interaction that we have with members at every stage is confidential and member focused. So I would ask you to avail of those services and contact me going forward. So my contact details are on the page here now. I'd be delighted to hear from you. And I just ask before we conclude, if anybody has any questions that they'd like to put to me now, or indeed offline, you can send me an email or drop me an email or give me a quick call at some point if you have any questions or would like to meet with me. So thank you so much for joining me. I don't see any questions appearing up on the screen here. Hopefully that means you got what you needed from the webinar. But as I said, feel free to pop up any questions or any comments or feedback that you might have, or indeed if there are any topics that you'd specifically like me to cover in future webinars. Really very happy to hear about those comments as well. We've a number of other webinars coming up over the next couple of months, specifically around interview techniques and competency-based interviews in particular. We're seeing a lot of interesting questions and queries around that as well. We also have another webinar that we did late last year, which was around mentoring. So if any of you are interested in mentoring specifically, feel free to check that out as well. I see one question coming through here. Not quite yet. Okay. Okay, great. Somebody just saying there, great presentation. So thank you very much for that. Hopefully it was useful. As I said, any further questions or queries, do feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.